Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Cardwell. I'm a City County Councilor here in the City of Indianapolis, and I'm privileged to be a volunteer for Project 9/11. In the morning hours of Tuesday, September 11, 2001, it was an ordinary day. The sun was bright, the air was cool. It was a day that began like any other. It was a day that ended like no other. Today here in Indianapolis, we come together to honor their lives, their courage, and their sacrifice. Thousands of people have helped make this monument possible. For the sake of brevity, all that can be said is thank you. It has taught us the need to embrace and celebrate our American roots. Courage, freedom, self-sacrifice, freedom of speech, independence, the right to worship as we choose, these principles worth dying for. More important, they are worth living for. Let Project 9/11 Indianapolis be a constant reminder of the great country we love and the founding truths and principles we must and will fight to protect. We will never forget. Now let me introduce the Honorable Greg Ballard, Mayor of the City of Indianapolis.
Like I said, it's an honor to be here today, but earlier this morning, I was out on West 56th Street at the overpass of the 465 bridge. And there's a man there who's been doing it for years now named Jimmy Clark. And as we speak, he's still waving that big flag. Tragedies do occur. The real test is what you do afterwards. It was obvious that we came together as a nation. But one thing that was an offshoot of that was the volunteer spirit in America skyrocketed. It spoke volumes about the character of our people. And it continues to this day. More and more people continue to volunteer to take care of those less fortunate and to help each other get through this. That is who we are as a nation. And despite the tragedy, 9/11 brought so much of our character out for the entire world to see. And I'm so proud to call myself an American. I'm so proud of the country that we live in because of the people that I'm looking at right now. Thank you so much for being here today.
Terrorism. We hear a lot about numbers. It's time to talk about individuals. Stacy Peak, born and raised in Tell City, graduated from Tell City High School. She moved to New York City in 1999 and worked on the 105th floor of the World Trade Center North Tower. Gary Bright, born and raised in Muncie, where he graduated from Southside High School. He was 36 years old. Karen Sue Jude, born in Bremen and attended school in Napanee, as an administrative assistant in the World Trade Center. Katie McCloskey, born in South Bend. She accepted a position as a computer specialist in the World Trade Center North Tower 2 weeks prior to the attacks. Lieutenant General Timothy Moss, he was the Director of Personnel Management and the Deputy Chief of Staff for Personnel for the entire U.S. Army. Colonel Buddy Boone, native of Milan and played basketball on the Milan High School basketball team. The official notification of his promotion arrived at his home 3 days after the attack. Major Stephen Long, born in Indianapolis, graduated from Cascade High School in 1981. He went to a meeting that day just by chance. Mrs. Brenda Gibson, born and raised in Indianapolis. Her dedication took her to work with her crew, and she rescheduled her surgery and went into the Pentagon on the 11th of September.
So in December of 2010, we found out that we were actually getting the beams. Then the panic hit home. Uh-oh, now what do I do? Let's see, I gotta find a site, I gotta finance it. How do I get the steel from New York? How do I complete the design, build the memorial, finance it, etc., etc., etc.? If I listed the hurdles. So as you can see, the site that we have selected is absolutely stunning. I am so proud of the design work that happened.
Ladies and gentlemen, Congressman Mike Pence.
Thank you, Jeff Cardwell. Governor Daniels, Mayor Ballard, Speaker Bosma, honored guests, the incomparable Greg Hess, and the members of Task Force One, friends and family all, and especially to those who are here remembering the names and the faces of those who fell on this day 10 years ago, and those who remember those who paid the price on a foreign battlefield in the 10 years that has passed. My name is Mike Pence. I had the privilege of representing Indiana and Washington, D.C. on this day 10 years ago. The good book tells us to grieve with those who grieve and mourn with those who mourn. And that if we owe debts, pay debts. If honor, then honor. And if respect, then respect. We gather today to grieve and to mourn, but we also gather to pay a debt of gratitude to those who've gone before, who brought us to this day 10 years hence. Like every one of you, I will never forget where I was on the morning of September 11, 2001. As a member of Congress from Indiana, that day my duties took me to Capitol Hill and to sights and sounds I will never forget. As I exited my office, shortly after word that the Pentagon had been hit, the evacuation order had been given at the U.S. Capitol, I'll never forget that sight. The United States Capitol was literally hemorrhaging with people running in every direction at full speed. I heard the deafening sound of sirens all around, the thunderous booms of military aircraft going supersonic at low altitude, and I saw the columns of smoke, billowing clouds of mud-brown smoke choking out of the conflagration just across the Potomac River at the Pentagon. As all the world watched the towers fall in New York City, I witnessed the aftermath of the first attack on our nation's capital since the War of 1812. It was a day when evil triumphed over good, and the cunning plans of the enemies of freedom had their moment. They thought they had unleashed violence sufficient to cow a great nation, but they were wrong. I will always believe that by God's grace, what our enemies intended for harm gave birth to a season of national unity and a new generation of American heroes. And as we all remember, that unity about which we heard poetry and song today happened almost instantaneously. At a time of great national division, today it's hard to imagine what Washington, D.C. was like in the hours and weeks and months that followed September the 11th. But the unity of that day was there. It did happen. I saw it. Standing on the East Lawn, surrounded by Capitol Hill security, in the swirl of events that morning, I knew that Congress would need to convene immediately to provide the authority and the resources for our national response. As the Capitol Police officers urged me to leave the grounds, I simply asked where I could report for duty. and was escorted to the office of the Chief of Capitol Police, where as I walked into that small room of just 15 souls, I found myself standing with the combined leadership of the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate of both political parties. Those leaders were huddled watching the events unfold on television sets and receiving reports from security officials in a room just across the street from the Capitol. When I arrived in the room, you can imagine, just a few short months after the most divisive presidential election of our nation's history, that room was divided as well. Congressional leaders were standing apart, divided by party and by institutions. But as that fateful morning wore on, things changed. We first received word that there was an aircraft in Pennsylvania inbound to the Capitol building, and we were told in that room that it was 12 minutes out. While we waited and the minutes passed, things began to change. In that little room, faced with a merciless attack on our nation, the politics of that room dissolved. There were no Republicans in that room. There were no Democrats in that room. There were just Americans. As I watched in the moments that followed, those leaders previously separated, set aside every divisive issue before the Congress, sat down at the table, and made immediate plans to move resources and programs designed to meet the moment with bipartisan resolve. But the true legacy and the inspirational power of September 11th cannot be found among political leaders of the day, but in the citizen soldiers and in the public safety personnel who answered that day with courage and selflessness. To the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who answered that day with resolve, who did what needed to be done without regard to their own safety, we owe our deepest gratitude. Like so many gathered here today, I have prayed and I have wept, and I have stood at the Indiana graveside of young men who on this day, 10 years ago, heard a call, answered that call, and laid down for us that last full measure of devotion. They did not shrink from 9/11, but they grew. They grew into heroes whose names will forever be engraved in the heart of a grateful state and nation. And to our police, fire, public safety personnel who ran in when others ran out, who braved the flames, who followed the leads, and who took such actions as were necessary to bring us to a decade free of another terrorist event on American soil, belongs the credit for this day as well. So this anniversary belongs to the fallen, to their families, and to all those whose diligence and tenacity brought safety to our families and justice to our enemies these last 10 years. A common enemy forged common ground, and a new generation of American heroes. Today we rightly pause to remember those who fell on 9/11 and every day since in the war on terror. We pause to celebrate those Americans who by their service and sacrifice have transformed this day from a day of tragedy into a triumph of freedom. And let us also pause to give thanks to Him who placed this miracle of democracy on this wilderness shores, saw us through that dark day, to this great celebration of liberty in Indiana and in America. Thank you all very much. God bless you all for being here.
Society for all. Let us rekindle hope and trust, and let us dream and labor for a time of understanding, harmony, and solidarity. Let us strengthen the hands of those who defend and the hearts of those who labor for peace. And let us renew our commitment to the values of democracy, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. And may the source of peace grant peace to all gathered here today, to the souls of those who have died, to our nation that continues to live as a testament of freedom to all the world. And let us say, Amen.
Waiting still, but it won't be long till he soars to heights he's never known. Eagle still flies, see how he soars. His wings may be seen, he's floating within, but he's come through the storm. To the sky high, even as the tears in his eyes, yeah, the eagle still flies. See how he soars, hey, hey, his wings make me sing, he's hurting within, but he come through the storm, and freedom still rings to the sky high, even after tears in his eyes, yeah, the eagle still flies.
Beautiful morning, I'm off to work, hustling to the car, still buttoning my shirt. Like every other day,